Hi everybody, Alex here, and today I want to talk about sketching and give you a couple of tips to make you a better sketching artist. And the reason is I see a lot of people on Instagram, especially beginning artists, who take their sketches or illustrations to a final level with color and line work and all these shebang to eventually post it online on social media with the feeling I get to impress people or show people how good they are. Well, I think that beginning artists are a lot better off just sketching and trying out ideas. At least I was when I was a beginning artist. So that brings me to my first tip: play with contrasts. As you can see in this drawing, I'm working with a blue line. And the reason I'm working with a blue line is because the contrast between white, the background color, and blue isn't that big. When I started out, I would always use, pick a full black color and work on a full white background. And the contrast was so big that it instantly felt as if the drawing was, an illustration. So it felt like I couldn't make any mistakes. But that's the whole point of making a sketch. You have to make mistakes and try out stuff. And as you can see in the background also, you see some perspective lines to show where I placed the table, and all these blue lines are, they help me to get to a visual. That also counts when you're working traditionally. The paper in a sketchbook, or any paper actually, is never 100% white. And the ink you use from a pen or Indian ink or whatever ink you use is never 100% black. So the contrast when you're working traditionally, especially when you work with a pencil, that's a gray, maybe a 50% gray on a 90% white paper. So the contrast isn't that big, so it feels a lot more approachable to just start working in and creating a drawing instead of, I have to do it perfectly. And that's the whole thing with a sketch. A sketch has such looseness in it that it's so approachable. You can just make something and throw it away. And that mentality, that mindset makes you get into a flow. And eventually you can just start adding stuff in there that you enjoy. You're the artist and you're creating your world. And when you start to feel confident about your drawing, you can always pick a darker color or a darker pen when you're working traditionally and add that to the parts that you want to highlight. And so you're actually increasing the contrast between the background and the line work you're putting in there. And a great warm-up exercise when you want to, play with contrast and start sketching is by just jotting down some lines on a piece of paper. And then you start looking at those lines and ask yourself, what do you see in these lines? And it might be things that you literally see in the lines, but it can also be stuff that you recently saw or you recently worked on, and you put those in the drawing. And this is a great warm-up exercise, not only to get your muscles warm for sketching, but it's also a great exercise for sparking up your imagination to really try to look and observe in your artwork and see what's going on so you can create a sketch out of that. And what you'll see when you do this is that when you're doing this for a couple of minutes, first it feels like a task, but eventually you'll get into the flow. And when you're in the flow, that's actually when your brain starts to erupt thoughts and imagination and all this cool stuff that we're looking for in art. Apart from playing with contrast, my second tip is to make notes during sketching. Don't confine yourself to only draw as you are a visual artist. You can also make notes and write stuff down. Now here you can see a lot of pages that I've made in my sketchbook. And as you can see, all of these pages, apart from having drawings, they also have notes in them. And the reason I make notes is because while I'm working on a sketch or a drawing, I have thoughts and stuff I need to remember the next time. And in my experience, I remember this stuff better when I write them down than when I don't write them down. In my opinion, sketching is another word for curiosity. You're trying to find a solution for something, and while you're working as a detective, you have to make notes and write stuff down in order to remember them. So let's have a closer look at this page, for example. And what you can see is that, again, I'm studying eyes here. This is what I'm focusing on. Here I have a couple of notes. So here I have some notes here. And the thing I'm seeing while I'm actually training myself in this exercise is that eyes are spheres. So while I'm drawing all these eyes, I draw one apart from it and I'm writing down it's a sphere. And this makes me really remember better because I used to draw eyes like this. And from the side they would look like this. But, you know, in a comic-y world that would work. But when you want to go a little bit more realistic, what I'm aiming for, then you have to really observe and see that the eye is a sphere. So from the side, it would look a little bit more like this. And the only reason I can do and draw this right now is because, first of all, I've practiced it tons of times. But I've also made notes which make me remember a little bit better. And apart from using it for training purposes, you can also do it when you're making an art piece. So for example, I was going on vacation and I wanted to make an art piece, which is this one. You know, I just wanted to visualize a couple of scenes that I experienced during this weekend away. And before I started with the ink work, I just made a couple of sketches over here and made some notes on what I wanted to put in this drawing. And over here, for example, I just made a list of things that we did on that vacation. So we were walking out in the woods, we were sitting on the couch, we were cooking, we were playing a game, and all these things, you know, I start with writing them down. And then here I started with, you know, putting out the scenes and writing in walking. So I have a place where I'm going to visualize that part of the experience. Now, without this, without number one, without the sketch, I couldn't get to the final artwork. Let's take a closer look at the process you as an artist go through to get to a finished art piece that you can show to an audience. Now, the last phase is the illustration phase. That's where you spend time on the details. So you're focused on the line thickness and how the lines look. And you're focused on the colors and the shading and all the nitty-gritty details. But before you get to the illustration phase, there's the ideation and visualization phase. In the ideation phase, you're just thinking about what you're going to do, what kind of visual are you making. And the visualization phase is where you're finding a visual translation for the ideas you have. Now, the ideation phase and the visualization phase are the fundamentals to get to a cool illustration. You can be a master at colors and shading and all that stuff, but if your idea is bad, it's never gonna be a cool art piece. Now, sketching is where you're ideating and visualizing. A great exercise that can help your ideation and visualization skills is this one. You start with writing down a word, any word, and you try to come up with different visuals that represent this word. So in this case, I write down a chair. My first iterations are just normal. But the more iterations I make, the more I see stuff I can play with. So you just have to keep going. And eventually you'll come up with stuff that's out of the ordinary. And that's actually when your ideas start to come alive. So you see that ideation and visualization are counterparts of each other. They help each other to become better. My third tip is to experiment with different mediums. There are so many different media out there. You can work digitally and traditionally, of course, but within traditional, there are tons of different ways to work. You can work with a pencil, with a pen, with markers, with ink, with different sorts of paint, watercolor, gouache, acrylic, oils. There are tons of different ways to work, and you can even combine them. Just find the type of media that works best with you. I just had someone who approached me and asked me to be his mentor, and he showed me beautiful line art sketches. But he had the assumption that he had to work with color, so I asked him, what color do you want to work with? And he said, I don't know yet. And I said, do you want to work with color? Because I don't see any color in your work. And he was like, well, I have to, right? No, you don't have to work with color. If you want to work with black ink on white paper, that's fine. If you want to work with green ink on blue paper, that's also fine. If you want to use acrylic in that, that's also fine. You can work whatever way you want to work. The more you experiment with these different mediums, the more stuff will happen that you didn't expect. And that's what Bob Ross calls happy little accidents.
You know, over and over again I say, we don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents.
And my last tip is that sketching should always be to learn. Like I said before, for me, sketching is another word for curiosity. Whether you're working on an art piece or you're training your skill set, in both of these cases, you're learning. It's a bit like dating. When you're dating someone, in the first phase, you're just finding out who this person is. You're trying to see if there's a fit. The commitments are low, you can just do whatever you want. You're experimenting. But the more you date, the commitments start to rise. And the more effort you'll start to put in there. Now, this is the same with an art piece. You don't instantly jump into illustration mode and start to work on the details. First, you need to find out if this art piece is worth taking it to a next level. Now, I'm a psychologist and I've analyzed what it makes to be a good artist. And what I found is that we as artists, and especially beginning artists, need to create a growth mindset. And a growth mindset, in other words, has the goal to learn. So in all the work you do as an artist, you need to figure out what kind of mistakes am I making and why am I making these mistakes. Don't use an eraser, but try to analyze what's going on. And then the next time, try to do it a little bit better. If you want to know a little bit more about the growth mindset, then check out this video. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments below, and happy sketching. Bye bye.